Sweet. How's it going?
Doing good. So I'm going to tell a story about a flight I had with Matt Beechner, farmer, in Idaho in the summer of 2015. My recollection is somewhere around the third week of June, give or take.
Yeah.
And we had forecasted the night before and that morning. We had forecasted a day with very good instability and chance of thunderstorms in the mountains and a fair amount of west wind. I want to say we had forecasted 10 to 15 miles an hour of west wind at most altitude, maybe a little bit less on the ground.
Is that pretty normal for flying in that area?
For Idaho, that's not unusual up high to have a fair amount of west wind. It's actually unusual to have light wind. So usually you're doing long distance flights to the east, and then there's a handful of days a year where triangles are more possible.
Okay.
And the one part of the forecast that had caught our attention was the chance of tall clouds, right, and the chance of thunderstorms. For a while, we had been trying to, and I think pilots in Sun Valley are still trying to fly to Jackson Hole. There's the promise from Nick Grease of hookers and blow if you can fly from Sun Valley to Jackson Hole. And who doesn't look like a good party, right?
Yeah.
So it's just always this kind of background mission, like let's try to get to Jackson Hole. And the thing about that is you have a very big mountain range across at the end of the day, the Tetons, and it means some sort of flatland flying to get through Idaho Falls.
Mm-hmm.
And Idaho Falls is this giant like green oasis with just irrigated fields all over the place in the middle of a really hot desert. So it's kind of a sinkhole.
Okay.
So our thought on this particular day, and in general our thought is like, hey, if you choose a day where it's kind of ODing in the mountains, where it's maybe thunderstorming in the mountains, then those are the days where there might be cloud streets in the flats, right? The instability is enough to have cloud streets in the flats. You're far enough away from the mountains for it to be reasonable, and you might be able to kind of get through that tricky Idaho Falls section.
Do you know how long that flight is?
Oh yeah, that would be 200. I forget.
Pretty long.
More than 200 miles.
And a lot of
200,
flying.
260 miles. You could it gets longer if you stay in the mountains.
Okay.
It'd be possible to stay mostly in the mountains, but then you'd be going pretty far north, like as you cross the 15, Highway 15, as you get into Montana.
So is this a route that you've tried before, kind of going this direction? Is it something that...
Yeah, I've flown east from Sun Valley a bunch,
okay,
and sometimes in the flats, sometimes stay in the mountains. There's 7 mountain ranges that are commonly flown east of Sun Valley, and they're all on the south side have the Snake River Plain, or the high desert of southern Idaho right there. Which has the lava fields. It's called the Craters of the Moon National Monument. Really jagged lava fields. We'll get to that. And it kind of they go in a little bit of a, if this is north and this is south, they kind of have a little curve to them. So if you're going directly east, you're gonna come off those mountain ranges at some point. You have to go northeast to stay in the mountains.
Okay,
If that makes sense. And flight, Gavin McClurg's biggest flight in that area to I forget the name of the reservoir was more northeast. It stayed in the mountains the whole way.
okay.
Yeah.
So you found a day that looked like it was possible maybe to at least try this course line.
Yep.
So you had the course line in mind.
And Farmer and I had discussed the OD. We were doing tandems that day. We probably had already done 2 tandems before we took off for the flight.
Okay.
So the norm is you do a drive up tandem at like 7 a.m. or so, and then do a gondola access tandem at 9. So we had probably gone back to take off at 10:30 or something like that, right? And at the time, right, we're looking to the east, and Mount Baldy's in the Smokies, and then you look across the valley that Haley, Colorado's in. Idaho's in. At Ketchum, Idaho.
Yeah, there you go.
All the names wrong. That Ketchum's in. You look across the valley, and you have like these hills going up into the Pioneers. The Pioneer Range, the actual crest of the range, is like pretty far away from towns. There's a bunch of hills, maybe 10 or more miles of hills going into it. And so we were looking across the valley, And on this peak Autos, which is right on the crest there, there's this really tall cloud, right? Marge Simpson style hair cloud. And so like, you know, our spidey senses were tingling. But so we get up, we launch. I should also note that Farmer has lived in that area for going on 20 years now, 15 years at that time, flown in that area a ton. He was one of the first pilots to fly 200 miles in the western U.S. from that area, and has set the U.S. record from Sun Valley. So like very, very good experienced pilot. We'd been doing tandems together for a couple years. I think that was our third year doing tandems together. And I'd be lying if I didn't say there was like a little bit of, I'd say, healthy competitiveness.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I lived in this garage, but basically his apartment was right above the garage I lived in. And so we'd see each other all the time. We'd be forecasting together. We'd play ping pong. And there was some healthy competitiveness to our flying. On this particular day, I was flying a Ozone Enzo 2.
All right.
And he was flying a Niviak Ice Peak 7.
Yeah.
Right. So we're both on pretty hot gliders also. And so, yeah, we get up. We get nice and high. There was a third guy there. I forget who he was. But Farmer and I crossed the valley towards Autos, right? Because we're trying to get into the crest of the Pioneers.
Pushing into the mountains.
Yeah, and towards where we had seen that big cloud, and that cloud had only been growing as we launched and climbed up. And that third guy just decided to call it, right? He went down and landed. And so we're pushing towards Autos on this pretty linear ridge that takes us right into the deep stuff. And that cloud just on the other side of Autos, so just on the Big Lost River range of the crest, the east side of that Pioneer crest, starts to rain. It starts to dump out. This is squeaking. Starts to rain. It starts to dump out. So we take a south turn and go into the biggest Pioneers, and we're probably getting, my recollection might be wrong, but we're getting 11, 12,000 feet, 13,000 feet, something like that. We're plenty high in the Pioneers.
Yeah, pretty high.
The highest peaks are around 11 or 12, if I remember right.
And it's raining near you.
Yeah, but just on the other side. So we do have a west wind, so downwind of us. And actually, like, all my thought is, well, the gust front's going that way because it's on the other side of the crest that the range is falling. Yeah. And this side of the crest is upwind. And also there's a topographical divider, right? So, but yeah, we do start to push south into like kind of the deepness of the Pioneers, which is this really spectacular mountain range, lots of big rocky faces and stuff on it. So we're kind of flying the crest of this range, and the whole time, the energy from that cloud, right, the cold air falling out and the gust front moving on the other side of the crest, powers up each of the other clouds on that east side of the range. Yeah. And like kind of as we're moving, every cloud just on the other side of the range just starts dumping out, right, kind of in line with us. And obviously, like, I hope you're hearing all these mistakes we made, right? There's competitiveness involved. We had forecasted thunderstorms. We had seen tall clouds. We saw it start to rain and still had an exit and landings, and we just kept pushing.
Are you feeling confident at this point, or are you kind of keeping those like, I see you, but I'm just going to keep doing my thing, or is there more concern involved?
There was concern, and multiple times I thought to myself, it's probably reasonable to go out and land. You should probably go out and land. And multiple times I also thought, well, Farmer's here. I want to fly with Farmer. If we do get around this thing, and like that's a stupid thing to be saying, right?
Right.
But if we do get around this thing into the flats with that west tailwind, it could be that perfect day, like we've been hoping for, right? And there was a little bit like, well, he's still flying. I'm still going to fly. Talking to Farmer afterwards, he was thinking the same thing. Well, Mitch is still in the air. I'm not going to land and let him have a huge flight without me, right? So we're kind of, neither of us even ever mentioned landing on the radio, right? And we have radio comms. So we don't mention landing, and we keep going, and then there's a certain time when we're kind of in the deepness of the Pioneer range with all that west wind kind of holding us in, so we're not going to really exit very far. There's landings and everything, but it'd be a big walkout, right?
Sure.
So like the chances of having a convenient landing are going down and down and down. And yeah, on a powered up day like that, it ended up being a record hot day in June. Record high temperature for that day. So a powered up day like that, it's not unusual to find 20 miles an hour of wind in those small valleys going into the Pioneers. Right? Yeah. Just valley flow, strong.
Huge draw.
Yeah, huge draw. Really desert environment. Lot of wind going up into the mountains. So so yeah, we're rolling along, and then we get this climb near this ski area, Beaver Mountain, if I remember right, on the south end of the Pioneers, and we're climbing, and those storms have kind of like crossed across the whole Big Lost River Valley, which is a big valley, and there's this like as we're kind of in this climb right off the south side of the ridge, there's this 10,000 whatever a really tall, maybe it was 6,000, maybe it was 10,000 foot wall of dust coming our way.
Oh.
Right? And
Right.
so there's the gust front, right? Very
Yeah.
obvious. And then you look this way a few miles, and there's this huge semicircle. Now we're talking in width, like probably 30, 40 miles, right?
Yeah.
Semicircle of dust devils going up.
Getting kicked off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting kicked up. Right in the dust devil circle is right in the Craters of the Moon National Monument, which if you haven't been to the Craters of the Moon National Monument, it's this huge area of desert. It's probably like 60 miles by 70 miles or something like that. It's huge. And it's filled with this really sharp, dried lava, almost obsidian, right? It's not like just lava like stones that are round. It's like sharp, jagged lava.
So daggers.
Daggers, yeah. You couldn't walk a mile in there and not ruin a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Right. It's
Wow.
just like, and even the pioneers back in the day just said like unpassable is what it said on maps, right? Like just not passable.
Do not go.
Right? There's
Right.
no animals in there. There's nothing in there. So even the fact that these dust devils were finding dust was kind of amazing. So we're fairly terrified at this point, right? Because we're climbing. Like no longer is our exit to the east with a tailwind possible, right? Because this wall of dust is only going to get closer, and exit to the west was not possible because of all that wind.
Right.
We'd just be pushing into a wind and getting a crappy glide, and then landing also in this gust front. So the only place to go is south. And Farmer comes on the radio and says, we pointed out the dust devil circle and the wall of dust coming.
Are you close to each other at this
Oh
point?
yeah. We're across one of those photos you have.
Yeah.
Is in this thermal. Yeah.
Okay.
The photo where like there's lots of rain right behind it.
Yeah,
This thermal I'm describing.
Yeah.
So we're like
a wall of water.
We're thermally wingtip to wingtip, right?
Awesome.
And so he asks, hey Mitch, what should we do? And I said, well, we have to go south, right? In my mind, there's only one thing to do. We have to go south. He said, well, what the hell's to our south? Is there anything to our south? And this is a guy who's lived in the area for 15 years talking to me, right?
Yeah.
I'm a summertime tandem dude who just shows up for a few months a year. So I have my phone on my deck and open Google Maps and kind of zoom out and zoom out and zoom out. And nothing is turned up. It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
I get back on the radio. It doesn't matter. We're going south.
Yeah. Almost safety-wise, right? I mean...
Yeah, at that point, because south was the only chance of, likely survival.
Okay.
Not even likely. Possible, right?
Yeah.
Possible to survive going south. Going east wasn't going to work. Going back to the west wasn't going to work. North, of course not, right? So south was the place to go.
This is sketchy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was full scale. And lots of mistakes. Don't get me wrong. And I might be like smiling and stuff now, but no, it was full on. At the same time, so Mike Fowl, Nate Scales, and Kiwi, our good late friend Kiwi, had flown King Mountain that day. The only reason Farmer and I hadn't gone is because we'd been flying tandems.
Right.
Everyone else in the area, all the other senders in the area had gone to King Mountain. And they had landed when it was reasonable. And they were driving through Arco at this time, which is a town right there at the south end of the Big Lost River Valley.
Mm-hmm.
They were driving through Arco, and the gust front came through Arco and was like blowing roof tiles off, tree limbs were snapping off into the road, like full on 50-mile-an-hour wind, gusty winds in town, like causing some damage, right? And they pull up XC Find, and Farmer and I are like almost right above them, right? So there we had at that from that point on, we kind of had some ground support too, or at least people on the ground worried about us. Yeah,
Not much they can do.
They
but
started chasing from there.
That's great.
We still beat them to our destination. Oh man, I just told you we didn't die. You can see. Ruined the whole story. So yeah, Farmer and I go south, right? And we're high at this point. I don't remember exactly, but let's say we're at like 13,000 feet. We're plenty high at this point. And we're going, and Farmer's like a little bit to the right of me. And that climb had been smooth, and the glide started smooth, and then boom, Farmer just drops as if he's skydiving.
Wow.
No joke. In my view, it was like, whoo, right? Just drops out of the sky.
Oh.
I'm like, oh shit. Okay,
Here
let's
it
go a
comes.
little further this way. Right? That wasn't a good place, so let's try somewhere slightly different. Right, and then boom, I drop it. I'm telling you, it was. I forget the numbers. You'd have to look at the track, but we were just plummeting, like glide ratio 1-to-1 type thing, right? Like you're landing right there, so something different doesn't happen. And turbulent plummeting, right? Dealing with the glider and all that stuff. You know, think about the mechanics involved here of, 120-degree day on the ground, and hail and ice coming from 30,000 feet or higher,
or
right?
higher, yeah,
down onto the ground. So, some interesting mechanics. Or physics. So
interesting or absolutely terrifying. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah. So it's, holding the glider open, crappy ass glide ratio, and barely able to hold the glider open, and the lava like coming right up, right, and
plummeting into the lava field.
The lava field, with likely 50-mile-an-hour winds, like right on your tail, or maybe right on your tail. So I recall being like 1,000 feet off the ground when we caught this climb, and Farmer being lower than me, right, above the lava. And Farmer later said, well, the good news about landing a gust front in the lava was that you wouldn't get dragged by your glider because it would explode as soon as it touched the ground. It's that kind of lava, really sharp. So
way to see like the positive in it.
Exactly.
Cool.
I thought it was certain death if we touched the ground. He thought there was a positive. So about 1,000 feet off the ground, I get a climb. Farmer gets the climb at about the same time. He's a little lower than me. And it's a rowdy ass climb, but obviously need it, right?
Yeah.
No doubt about it. And I couldn't get my my risers to stop doing half twists for the entirety of that climb. Yeah. So I'm turning, and the glider's just ratcheting. And like a sharp glider makes like noises when it's doing that sort of stuff. Like whistles through the air, like rushes through the air. So you're just like, and you're just getting hurried around and trying to keep this thing in a turn, and not like have it all, get all
fully
twisted
wrap up. Yeah.
But there was no other option, right? We had to climb. So we climb up in that one, and then go on glide, and kind of a similar thing, like get a pretty decent glide to tons of sink to a really rowdy climb, but the amplitude went down a little bit. And this repeated like a few times. And so when we were getting a good glide, it was just like not going down, and then all of a sudden we'd fall off of it.
Wow.
Right? So this repeated a few times, amplitude going down, and like now we're talking a couple hours of this stuff, right? An hour and a half, 2 hours of this stuff, but the amplitude going down, but still gripped because there's nowhere to land, right? And not only is there nowhere to land, but it's like it's not just a tree land; it's land on sharp lava, probably in a lava.
Dagger field.
Yeah, dagger field. And then, at the beginning, we couldn't see the end of the lava field, right? It's 60, 70 miles. It's a long way. So then eventually we get to see the end, and we're seeing American Falls Reservoir down there, which is in southern Idaho, northern Utah, near Pocatello. So we're seeing American Falls Reservoir, and the water's glassy. You can see from way off that it's glassy. I'm like, oh, there's no wind there. And then I see a truck driving on a road. I'm like, oh, look, there's a dirt road. The lava's kind of ending, and the dust from the truck is going straight up, no wind.
Wow.
And we.
What are the clouds doing? Are you still underneath clouds?
No,
at this time?
down there, I don't recall any clouds.
Okay.
I don't recall any.
You're really running from all the clouds that there were.
Yeah, exactly. We were running from all the clouds that there were. Down there, I don't recall any clouds. And so then we go and we land in this city park in Aberdeen, which is right there near American Falls Reservoir, and beautiful grassy park landing, zero wind landing, right? Zero wind on a hot day, so actually like moving pretty fast. Landing, and this dude immediately runs out. He's like, "Hey, there's a fish fry going on in that park, right? The park across the street. Here's some tickets." He gave us 2 tickets to the fish fry, and Farmer just like gathers up his glider and just collapses in the shade of a tree. And I kind of take off my gear, and I go over and I try to give Farmer a high five. I'm like, yeah, man, good job, we survived. She's like, get the fuck away from me. Don't talk to me. I'm like, what? It's like, just don't talk to me right now. So like I packed up my gear by myself in the shade, didn't talk to Farmer. And then Nate and Mike Fowl and Kiwi showed up and gave us a ride home.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a pretty amazing thing. So obviously, lots of mistakes made, right? A lot of them were like trying to fly our desires, not the day, that old saying of fly the day, not your desires.
Right.
We had kind of like, we were hoping the day was going to fit in our very narrow box we wanted it to fit in, instead of just looking at it and, knowing what time.
You forced some stuff.
Force it. Yeah, we forced it hard. I think I think sometimes competition can be phenomenal, but there are times when more minds will make better decisions, and then there are times where more minds would make worse decisions. And if Farmer or I were there individually in that same position, I think either of us would have landed early in the flight, more near autos, right, where we saw the first clouds start to rain. But because we were together, we just kept pushing it. So, which is weird, because sometimes multiple minds will make you do more conservative things, or make you see more, make you observe more, right? See more hazards. But sometimes multiple minds the competition comes into play and you start pushing it too much.
Would you consider yourself a risk taker as far as your flying?
No, I wouldn't. No. Typically, I'd say the cool flights I do are because of like planning and because of being risk adverse, and I'll sometimes go land early on days where you have to scratch to stay up. I'm just like, well, it's not a record day, and I don't want to be 100 feet from the rocks all day, so I'll go land. So no, I don't. No, in fact, I don't really like that feeling of adrenaline. I'd like, some people would have loved this day as far as like just feeling all present and all there, and I didn't like that feeling at all. I felt wiped out after this day.
I bet. Yeah. I mean, you were in survival mode.
Yeah.
So the flight itself was just under 5 hours, right? About 4.5 hours.
If I remember right.
Yeah. And you flew just over 100 miles.
Yeah.
And going about just under 40 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, and
So
the beginning part of the flight wasn't very fast because we didn't have a tailwind, right? We were going crosswind in the mountains. So like the actual I remember seeing high speed. I remember trim speed being like 90 an hour over the ground.
Yeah, so you're
moving. Yeah. I feel like I remember that one of those glides we had that was really turbulent, looking down at my ground speed and be like, man, I'm not on speed bar just to keep this glider open, right?
Yeah.
And I'm still going 90 over the ground.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Did you need a break after that, or did you get right back to tandems the next day?
I think I flew over 100 miles the next day. I'd have to look until next contest. But I seem to remember being I was exhausted. Flew tandems the next morning, but knew like I had to get right back on the horse, and it was a decent forecast. So I did like a pretty local milk run. I flew from Baldy to Smiley Creek, which is also it's a grass airstrip with a restaurant right there.
Oh, cool.
So I worked probably 2 tandems and then flew to Smiley Creek and had lunch, if I remember right. And a nice mountain flight to Smiley Creek. Yeah.
I mean, this is a pretty epic flight. I've heard you tell this story a couple times, and is it a flight that going back, being on launch again, and knowing what would happen, would you do the flight again?
No.
You wouldn't have taken off?
Absolutely not. And I think if I was in the same place today, I wouldn't have done it again. I may have taken off.
Yeah.
Right, but like that, what the other guy who's with us did, who like landed in town, was perfectly reasonable. Right, no risk to it at all, or not any more than any flight. And we even had a chance, like as soon as that cloud started pouring out on the other side of the Pioneers, on the other side of autos, that was a good exit. Big lanes below us, right over a road where we could hitchhike back to town if we didn't make the glide, and we probably wouldn't have in that west wind. Landing zones I know well. Right?
Yeah.
Like that. That would have been a great time, and it would have been completely reasonable. Just it was a fact of pushing too hard, and it's been a really good lesson for me. And the thing, we always want to be on the safe side or on the survivaling side of any risk decision. And here and there, you want to be conservative on the safe side of gust fronts, let's say. So here and there, we're going to look around while we're flying, say all the clouds are growing tall, one of them is going to rain out soon. It's going to be enough power for the whole system that they're all going to start raining out. I'm going to be
Right.
I'm
One
not-
drops and it triggers the others
Triggers the
to
other.
then come down.
Mhm.
Yes.
So here and there, we're going to go land early because we kind of see the recipe for that, and I've done this many times. And you land, and then the clouds get less tall, right? All of a sudden,
Yeah.
the day changes, whether cloud base goes up or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Dew point changes somehow, and the clouds get less tall, and then it looks like a very nice last few hours of the day,
Right.
right? Or you land and there's rain and a gust front, and you always want to be occasionally trending on the side where you land, and the day looks totally reasonable for the rest of it,
Right.
and that's not a mistake,
No.
right?
No.
Like when you do that, it's not like, oh, I called it wrong, I really need to get better. No, you nailed it,
Right.
Because you want to trend towards not landing in gust fronts, not having to fly across like a knife desert
Yeah.
to survive, right?
Right.
You don't want to trend towards this like being on the sharp edge, and if you get it wrong, you're on the sharp side of the sharp
Yeah.
edge.
Yeah. In fact, it seems like to be a good pilot and to fly for a long time, this flight's not necessary for your quiver.
Oh no.
You know, I mean, you've learned all these lessons in other ways as well.
And it wasn't 170K for Idaho is like a small change, right?
Right.
It wasn't a big flight by any means for the local area, and the only thing that makes it a story is how stupid it was.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So, yeah. I hope to never do it again, and I feel pretty fortunate that Farmer and I got away with it to learn our lesson from it,
Yeah.
and it's been a good lesson. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome.